Talking chops a chord, I played that too, cuz.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Birdie Brothers podcast. I'm alongside my gracious, good-looking fella of a co-host here, Luke Hall. And I want to first start out by thanking our sponsors before we get into our very special guest today. Our first sponsor is half a bottle of tequila, a surefire way to break your 9-iron in a fit of rage. And Birdie Juice, a poor excuse for being drunk at 4 p.m. because we all know you didn't make any birdies. All right, Luke, let's swing it over to you.
All right, thanks, Ben.
Mm-hmm.
Today we have our very first guest on the Birdie Brothers podcast from Valencia, California, starting off as a stud junior golfer in the 90s, placing second twice in his 7 trips to the Junior World Championships, winner of the 1996 Japan Cup, winner of the 1998 and 99 Toyota Skills Championship with over 1,500 golfers competing. Also, a winner of several amateur events, a quality player at the UCLA from 2005 to 2008 with 57 career rounds, 10 top 10s, 18 top 20s, and a part of the 2008 National Championship team. After college, he caddied for PGA Tour player Kevin Chappell from 2010 to 2012, and then served as assistant coach for the UCLA men's golf team until 2015. Before golf, he was number 3 in the world in BMX bike racing. Now you can find him absolutely burning through the Central Valley mountain bike trails, biking hundreds of miles per week, making my Strava account look weak as can be, all while coaching the one and only Cal State Stanislaus golf team. Ladies and gentlemen, they call him BC for short, Brandon Christianson. Welcome to the show.
Luke, Ben, thanks for having me. Quite the introduction there.
Do a little research for that one.
Well deserved, Coach.
Well, I appreciate it. And I hope I can live up to all that.
It's a lot of hype. All right, Coach. Well, let's first just get started out. How'd you get into the game of golf? How'd it become your thing?
Well, my dad played a little bit growing up, but it was more, I had a neighbor who lived down the street who, him and his dad played a bunch and they were all into it. And I want to say, I'm not sure if the first time I went out was with them or with my dad, but it was kind of the combination of those two things. And we ended up going out to the course. And I mean, when I got started, I remember, I thought, we'd go to the driving range and that's what I thought golf was. I didn't realize, I didn't really comprehend, the game of golf as far as, putting and chipping and everything around the green. I just loved hitting balls. I thought that was just the coolest thing in the world. And I just wanted to go to the range and to watch, the guy next to me ripping drivers that, looked like they were going to the next county. And I just loved it. Just kind of have I have an obsessive personality. And so it was a perfect fit for me.
And you were super into biking before, like I mentioned in the intro, 3rd in the world in BMX. Like, when did you start biking, and then golfing later? Or?
Yeah, so I was doing BMX racing, which is just on a little short track on a BMX bike, and I was doing that when I was pretty young, like 7, 8, 9 years old, and then I started golfing. What ended up being the tail end of my BMX career. Because there just wasn't room for both of them. I just got so into golf once I started that basically led to me quitting BMX, just went all in on golf. So it was BMX first, and then as soon as I started playing golf, it was like forgot what BMX was. Wasn't even worried about it anymore.
Yeah. So, like, were you? You said you were super into going to the range. Were you still playing? Like, how often were you playing? And then, like, were you just kind of beating it into the dirt? Do you have like a coach that you started out with, or?
Well, when I started playing, I was probably on the range for months before I ever went onto a golf course. And the course I grew up on, there's a par 3 course and a little executive course, and so I basically just after however many months on the range, I just started going to the par 3 course and basically grew up on that. And then even throughout junior golf and throughout high school, like I played this par 3 course. That was definitely the course I played the most. I was always a range guy. Just loved trying to hit it better and hitting different shots. Like I was all into it and hit balls all day.
Makes sense, Coach. When you grab my 3-iron and haven't hit a ball in a month, and you're just like, "Yep."
I hit a good 3-wood the other day with you.
Yeah.
I was happy, but it didn't go very far, but it looked nice.
Hey, I gave you your 3-wood back. You should be pumped about that.
I think it's gonna make its way. I'm looking over at my golf bag right now. I think I got room for it in there.
You're not playing a whole lot nowadays? Huh?
No. Usually if I got a buddy swinging through town, or I like playing with you guys when it works out, but I always make sure, if I know I'm going to play with you guys, I got to go hit the range that week and go up, hit a few buckets at River Oaks, sneak some practice in, make sure I'm not going to embarrass myself.
Yeah. Did you have a coach as a kid? Like
coach? Yeah. So this guy Les Johnson, he taught out at Vista Valencia, which is the course I grew up on. Just awesome coach, old school kind of Ben Hogan, lots of lag. He was such a good, he still is, he's such a good swing coach. When he was coaching me growing up, I was so into, whatever he told me, I was going to do 100%. Didn't worry why I was going to do it, or didn't worry about anything else. It was just whatever he said to do, I just did it. And, then I go hit a million balls, and then I come back and we work on the next thing. And I didn't realize it at the time, but it was such a good way to really progress. He never, there's a lot of terms that he never touched on with me, because like they didn't matter. And it didn't matter if I knew that I was under it or over it, or that my club face was open or shut. Like he wouldn't tell me, oh, you're coming under the plane and doing this, because that's, he would see that and think of a way to fix it, and then tell me to do that, and then I would just work on that. And so he was really a good coach. He understands the golf swing as well as anyone, and I couldn't think any more highly of him.
Great.
Yeah, he works with or I'm not sure if he still does, but he worked with Max Homa for a while within the last few years, and he's worked with a number of UCLA guys and all sorts of good players. He's a top-notch guy.
That's right.
Yeah. Go ahead, man.
So you kind of touched there on how you felt like he was a really good coach, and he didn't tell you the specifics of what was wrong with your swing mechanically, but he helped you with the feel or what you should be feeling maybe, or what you need to be working on, instead of giving you the technical terms. Do you think that a lot of people who are just picking up the game, or maybe progressing, trying to get to the next level, do you think they struggle with overcomplication of technique and form and instruction? And how difficult do you think it is to have like a really good golf instructor?
I'd say short answer, yes. It's easy for the new golfer to for it to be overcomplicated, and for them to be putting too much into their brain and be trying to do too much at once. And I think there are a lot of good golf instructors out there, but it's it's tricky to find someone that can make it real simple. And that's the trick. And I think that's what any new golfer or anyone, that's looking for a swing coach and trying to figure out, who's going to be right for them. I mean, everyone's different, right? Like you got Bryson DeChambeau, who, I mean, if someone told him something simple, he'd just be like, get out of here. I don't,
Yeah.
He needs the most complicated answer possible.
Yeah.
But I mean, for most people, whoever can make it simple, and that's tricky. It's hard to make. I mean, the golf swing is complicated, and working with someone on their golf swing, it's really easy for someone to take a swing and to see 10 things wrong. But what a good coach can do is sort through those, prioritize it, and then figure out how to address them, not necessarily one by one, how to like group them together and figure out, if we clean up this thing, it'll clean up 3, 4, and 5, and then they go down the list. But it's important for the instructor or the coach to be doing that, and they don't necessarily need to tell the student that all that's going on. And that's like my guy Les. That's where he was just hitting home runs with he wasn't telling me his process. He had his process, but he would just tell me, do this. He wouldn't tell me, all the things wrong. He would just tell me some things to make it better.
Yeah, I feel like in like the age of social media too, it's like all the big instructors, like they have Instagram pages, and like everyone's posting videos of swings and like writing paragraphs about like what these pros are doing in their swing. And it's like, for anyone who's like I'm pretty like independent guy. So like a lot of times, like as a kid, like I was always into just like trying to self-teach and like just look and like read books, watch videos. And it was difficult because it's like they're throwing out all these things, but like I could be doing what they're saying to do already, and like I don't even need to work on that, but it's like subconscious. So I guess it doesn't sound like your guy Les did a lot of video stuff, but how would you say that he did a good job of like balancing the swing and then like taking that to the golf course, or was that something that you just went out and kind of figured out on that par 3 course, just like playing around type thing?
So 2 answers there. So the first part, for video, he would take video, but he wouldn't. It was for him. He would take the video, he would look at it, and then he would tell me things to do. He wouldn't bother me with it. He wouldn't. Every now and then he'd be like, "Oh, come see this one," and he would show me, like my swing last week, and then a swing I just took, and he'd say, "Hey, look, you're doing a good job. Look at how much we've changed in this week." Or he'd say, "Hey, I know it feels different, but look, you're doing the same thing."
Yeah.
But then as far as taking that to the golf course, that's a real trick, and that's something that that's that a lot of. I mean, that comes down to the player and how they approach their game. Whether they have different mental tricks they're working on or different things they do in their process, because yeah, I mean, you can take swings on the range and be thinking, very mechanically, and you're hitting off, flat lies that are the same every time to comfortable targets. And then, yeah, you're on the golf course with a weird wind and a shot that doesn't look right to you, and you throw the mechanics out the window. And so I think that's where coaching, bridging that gap is something that swing coaches and instructors have a hard time doing, because a lot of them are spending a lot of time just on the range, not spending a lot of time on the golf course. So it's definitely tricky to bridge that gap if your world is just on the range.
Mm-hmm. Did you ever go out onto the course with Les, or?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
We'd go out on the course, and I think, yeah, he was mostly a driving range guy, but so when we would get out on the course, it was as good for him as it was for me, because he'd be able to get out there and kind of remember the whole point, remember what his students are trying to do. They're trying to they're not just trying to swing better, they're trying to take what he's telling them to the golf course so they can hit reliable shots and shoot lower scores. So yeah, I think, that was good when we did that. I think he probably does that more now than when we worked together at a younger age. I think he probably spends more time on the golf course with students. Actually, he worked with Joe Griner, who's Max Homa's caddy now. He worked with Joe for years, and Joe was trying to play professionally. He played on the Canadian tour for a few years, and Les would travel to tournaments, spend a bunch of time on the golf course, and so I think over the years, Les moved more from just a driving range pro to a coach that was really involved in the whole package.
So, not to take too big a leap here, Coach, but another interesting fact about yourself is that you were in the movie Jerry Maguire. And let's talk about that briefly. Let's talk about how that all happened, what scene you're in, so people can go back and watch it. And
I'm gonna play it.
Oh, you're gonna play it? Oh, good.
Oh, you got it? You got it?
You got the
Beautiful.
Volume up.
Let's go.
You gotta concentrate. You wanna be a champion?
Believe me, there's genius everywhere, but until they turn pro, it's like popcorn in the pan. Some pop,
Darn it! What the heck? Oh, okay, let's watch.
Honestly, great acting there. Like, that was impressive.
Yeah, that was hardly much acting. That was just a standard reaction for missing the 20-footer.
So Coach, is it true that you're still getting paid royalties to this day for that?
It's absolutely true. I mean, I've probably got a check within the last month or two. Yeah.
Oh my God, that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. So how did that shake out? I forgot.
So yeah, well, actually, it was kind of a nice segue because Les's wife, she worked in the movie business, and she knew, maybe she worked for Sony, they were producing Jerry Maguire or making the movie, and she knew about the role. She knew they were looking for like a young golfer for a role, and so they told me about the audition, told me to go try out for it. So I was like, oh yeah, sounds great. So yeah, my mom took me down to some studio, and they had this audition, and they kind of they didn't have like exact lines of what they wanted you to do. They were just kind of like, pretend you miss a putt and you're not happy about it. And so I pretty much what I ended up doing in the movie there was what I did at my audition, and they liked it, and so
Gotcha.
got the role.
Sweet.
At that point, so going back, so you started to go to the range quite a bit, hitting a lot of balls. At what point did you start to succeed and excel at the junior? Because obviously, like I was reading, you had all these. You went to Junior Worlds. You're winning tournaments.
I mean, I guess it was pretty quick.
Yeah.
I don't know the exact timeline, but I mean, like I said, I just hit balls for a few months, and then, I mean, by the time I was going out on the course, I was already pretty good. And I don't know how long it was from when I started going on the course to when I won a tournament. I bet it wasn't very long.
Yeah.
Just a stick.
Just a ton of hard work.
Yeah.
What about that Japan Cup? What was that all like? And win?
Well, so they had that. So that from Junior World, they used to be the top three from Junior World in every age division qualified you for this Japan Cup tournament, and it was like the top three in every division got all expense paid trip for you and a parent or a chaperone to go to Japan and play in this tournament. And so I think it was Junior World, and then there was the Optimus International in Florida. That was like another qualifier for the Japan Cup, and then maybe a couple other tournaments internationally. So it was a small field. in Japan, and I want to say the year that I won it might have been the last year that they did it, because I got top 3 again, but I only went to Japan once. I think that first year that we did it was the last year that they were doing that tournament. But it was in I think it was in Nagoya, Japan, and course was awesome, kind of up on this mountain, and really cool course. They had the cups were made out of like tin, and so when you make a putt, it was just like real loud, high pitched, like ping. So you could hear it from all over the course. Like you could hear, if you were on the tee box on a par 4, you could hear someone putt out on the green.
That's
Yeah.
pretty sick.
Huh.
I'd never seen that before.
So how old were you at the time?
In Japan, I guess I must have been 10 or 11.
Okay, so did you remember much from the trip?
Yeah.
Remember?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
So how was going to Japan and being?
Well, I'm bummed looking back at it, because at that time I didn't eat a very diverse food, and my mom probably packed me a bunch of like cheese and crackers, and I remember we went to McDonald's in Japan, and we like ordered pizza from Domino's. We didn't, and that was just me at the time, was just eating like a little kid. So definitely a regret there looking back. Wish I would have enjoyed the food more while we were there. But it was a fun trip. Yeah, we spent a few days outside, just the golf tournament. Like we went to Tokyo and did some tours and stuff, and it was awesome. Yeah.
Was that your first win?
I had won tournaments before that.
Oh, okay.
But that might have been, that was definitely like my first, big multi-day tournament that I won.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was probably the first multi-day tournament that I won. All the other ones might have just been one day junior tournaments.
Mm-hmm.
And when did UCLA start recruiting you?
Pretty early. Yeah, I was pretty young, and I was pretty young when I committed to go there. Yeah, that might have been right around when the early recruiting was really getting kicked off, because I remember, when I was a junior golfer, I remember guys that were still taking official visits, before their senior year, and still, they would genuinely be deciding between a few schools going into their senior year and taking trips to, decide where they wanted to go. And then it wasn't too long after that where, kids were committing freshman, sophomore year in high school. They're, committing to schools way before you'd ever take an official visit. So it was, probably right around, I might've been guilty of starting that trend a little bit. But yeah, probably right around my time of entering college, where the recruiting and the pressure to, commit younger was definitely happening.
So, so it looks like, I looked at your website. You have a website with like all your track record, so like junior golf through the UCLA days. Well done, by the way. It's a cool website. There's pictures and videos.
My mom. You can thank my mom.
Awesome.
Yep.
Yeah, so it looks like you had a pretty stellar high school career there. I saw what stuck out to me was you shot, I think, 65 at Harding Park, or 62, or was it 62?
I had a 62. I might have had a 65, but it wasn't at the Harding you're thinking of. It wasn't the Harding up here, like where they play the PGA.
Okay, but regardless, it said it was like lowest score ever recorded by like a SoCal high school golfer. So I was like,
it was at Sewell Park. It was in the CIF regional, or regional qualifier. I just had it rolling, shot a low one. But I think in the next I want to say Ricky Fowler tied it or beat it like within a few years after that.
Okay. Yeah, I was gonna add, like, in your obviously California is like a hot spot for golfers, but like in your high school league, like were there any like guys who are on tour now or like professional now or that you were playing against?
I don't from high school. No, from high school, none of them, at least locally, none of them are on tour. I mean, Max, Max Homa played at the same high school as me, but he was a few years after. So yeah, the only one who, yeah, I mean, his caddy, I played high school golf with his caddy, Joe. But yeah, no one else. The only, yeah, no one actually on the PGA Tour. There was a guy though. Not even really sure if he played on the high school team. He went to, so I went to Valencia High. Our rival was Hart High School, and Joe played at Hart. And there was a guy that Joe is friends with. I don't even know if he played on the team, but he coaches on the PGA Tour now. He coaches a bunch of guys. Drew Steckel.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he coaches. Yeah, maybe like Kevin Na and a handful of other guys, and yeah, he has an interesting story, interesting path to where he is. But he was a local guy from our same little crew.
Mm-hmm. Were you looking at any other schools? Sorry, Ben. Besides UCLA, like. Yeah,
mostly West Coast. I was looking at ASU and UNLV. But yeah, UCLA was only 30 miles from where I grew up, and it was just always a school. It was, pretty much always where I wanted to go.
So
mom went there.
Oh, okay, cool. So Coach, did you meet, is that where you met Chap? Is that the first time you met Chappell, was at UCLA?
Yeah, we didn't know each other before. We never really crossed paths at many junior tournaments. Yeah, we met. We met, on a recruiting trip, I think after we had both already committed.
That's cool. So were you guys roommates?
We never actually lived together, but the last couple years we lived in this small apartment complex where he had a place like right upstairs, and it was basically like we lived in one place and he was upstairs, and me and another guy, Craig, we were downstairs.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So talking directly about your UCLA career, what was one of the highlights? I know you guys were a part of a national championship team. I mean, was that the highlight for sure? Was there anything like a personal highlight of yours, or?
I mean, yeah, obviously as a team winning a national championship, like it's hard to beat. But I think, I don't know. I mean, yeah, we had lots. We were pretty, the team went through peaks and valleys, I'd say. There were definitely times where, because we were all so competitive that there were times where, not like we hated each other, but I mean, we just wanted to beat each other so bad day in and day out that like, sometimes like we all just didn't get along. But then at the same time, like, I think that ultimately just made us all, respect each other more. And, there were times where, we were just such a tight family. I'd say definitely some of the fondest memories were off the course, a few times, the whole team, like we went to Korean barbecue. We had a few Korean guys on the team that loved taking us, we'd go over to Koreatown and, they'd have the spot and, they'd get it all set up, and it was just a blast. I'd say some of those going to football games, basketball games, some of that stuff was definitely the coolest stuff.
How many guys were on the team when you were there?
It was usually around 9 or 10.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I don't think we ever had less than 9, but maybe sometimes we had more than 10. But it was generally kind of on the bigger side of a team.
Did any of those guys besides Chap go on to play after?
Yeah, a few of them. I'd say a number of them are, have varying status kind of all over the world. Daniel M, he played in Europe for a while, maybe still playing, I'm not sure. Lucas Lee, same thing, he's played on every tour from Korn Ferry to European, Latin America, maybe he played in Asia too. He's played all over the world. Eric Flores maybe still has some Corn Ferry status. Maybe still plays a little bit. Trying to think. There are guys in the generation just older than us, like when we first came into school, guys that just finished up. John Merrick, obviously played on tour for a while. Travis Johnson was on his team. He started Travis Matthew a few years after college. It was good. It was a good community.
So how what was the timeline? Because I know that you were the assistant coach at UCLA, right? So was that right after you graduated, or was there a gap, or how did that go?
Yeah, there was a little gap. So I stayed my 5th year to finish up school. So I was done with my eligibility and I was hanging out to finish up school, and we didn't have an assistant coach at the time. So I was an undergrad assistant, but I got to travel to tournaments and really pretty much act as the assistant coach, and just loved it. Knew I wanted to coach, was all in on it. So when I graduated after that year, I was looking for a coaching job, and then wound up just randomly linking up with Chappell while I was looking for a coaching job, and just wound up caddying for him just randomly for a few events, and we had some success. And he basically, he never made it through Q school, but he just Mondayed into a bunch of web.com events and, got a status that way. And so, yeah, I wound up caddying for him for 3 years before then I got a call from the UCLA coach who was like, "Hey, I think my assistant's going to leave. You still interested in coaching?" And I was. So yeah. So it was 3 years. 3 years from when I graduated to when I went back in an official capacity as the assistant there.
Gotcha. So yeah, you got a little bit of experience and you really liked it, and you knew that was what you wanted to do, although you went with Chappell for a little bit. So how you said this briefly, you said Monday qualifiers. I just want to put this into perspective for others that may not know what that is, or how difficult it is to get into a golf tournament on Monday qualifiers. Could you go through the process of that and like how difficult it really is for tour players to do that kind of deal and to try and play in tournaments based upon that?
Yeah. So for a PGA Tour event, they have a Monday qualifier, which is on Monday, the week of the tournament, at a different golf course in the same area where the event is, but it's on a different course. And there's usually, it's a full field, full golf course, 140 guys, and they're playing for, I think it's just 2 spots for a PGA Tour event. And a lot of the field is PGA Tour players that didn't get into the field for the tournament. So you might have, 30 guys that are in the Monday qualifier that are PGA Tour players. And then just a number of other good players, and it takes a really, really low score to qualify through there. And it's tough. Now on the Corn Ferry Tour, they have Monday qualifiers also, but there's more spots, and there's way more spots. I want to say, I don't know the exact number that they have now, but usually they get a lot of entries, so they'll have 2 different sites, and then each site will have it's either 4 or 6 spots from each site. So it's either 8 or 12 total that they have. And so that's, for someone trying to go that route who doesn't have any status on a tour, to try and play your way onto a tour, that's the way to go, is to go to the Corn Ferry Monday qualifiers, and you have a way better chance at getting through those. And so that's what Chappell was doing. And he must have missed 10 in a row, maybe, where he was traveling around. All over the country, following it week to week, wherever they were. And then he made a handful in a row. And then, so if you make it through the Monday qualifier, and then if you play well in the tournament, you can get in the next week. So on the Corn Ferry Tour, it's top 25, and you're in the next week. You don't have to qualify again. But on the PGA Tour, you have to get top 10 to get in the next week. So that it's tough to chase the PGA Tour Mondays, but it's a lot more reasonable to do the Corn Ferry route. And that's when I hooked up with Chap there, that's what he was doing, chasing the Corn Ferries. And yeah, we had a good run where he didn't have any status, and we might have played, 5-6 events in a row, and did well.
Sweet.
Going off that, I want to ask you this. This is I love talking to people who like know a lot about golf. I like asking them this type of question. So like, you obviously a great player, and then caddied on the PGA Tour, coached D1 school, now you're coaching a D2 school. Like, how good do you have to be as a golfer to have a realistic, from your point of view, a realistic chance of actually making it onto the PGA Tour? So like, I wrote down some numbers. So there's 292 D1 schools in the country. So like 8 guys per team. Say that's like 2,000 golfers, 125 tour cards. And then that's not even including people who want to come over from Europe and not go on to a D1 school or Asia or whatever. Is this too like simple of a question? Like, is there more nuance, do you think? Or like, do you have an idea? Like, can you boil it down to like some common traits or characteristics, or like, what are your thoughts on that?
Yes, I'll give you a couple of different answers. So, because people have asked me that before, and the best way I can describe it is, if you're really trying to play professional golf and you're trying to pursue that, the way I describe it is, you have to be the best golfer you know. You have to be the man. Assuming you're a male trying to play on the PGA Tour. You have to be the best golfer you know. If you know someone that's better than you, well, they better be on the PGA Tour. If you know a few people that are better than you and they're not on the PGA Tour, I mean, you definitely have to get better than them. And so I think, a lot of people don't look at it that way. A lot of people like, they like to assume that, they can maybe just play well at Q school, or maybe they'll get a little better down the road. Maybe, I don't know. I think that's what it boils down to, is the people that have a chance are the ones that, they're better than everyone they know. And that's how they look at it, because that's how Chappell was. Chappell, if he looked around and someone was better than him, he was not happy about it. He was trying to figure out what he could do to beat him. Or why is this person beat me? He didn't like it, and he kind of went that route. So that's kind of the answer I give people, is you've got to be the best and start there. Then then you have a chance. Then go out and kind of expand your range to what that covers. But more along the statistical answer about like what you brought up with how many golfers there are, and how many really good golfers there are, and how there's very few that are actually making a living at it and have PGA Tour status. There's 125 on the PGA Tour, but 75 of them aren't going anywhere. There are guys that have been there for veterans or young studs that, they're not going anywhere. And out of the next 50, some of them maybe lose their card every now and then. Maybe some people had a good year, a bad year. It's not a huge revolving door. So of the 125, you may only be talking about 10 or less that are really revolving, guys that are getting old and retiring, or moving to the Champions Tour, or just not playing well and played their way off the tour. So it's if you're looking at it like it's a job, and you're looking at it as PGA Tour as the employer, there's 5 to 10 at most on the PGA Tours, 5 to 10 job opportunities per year. Which is tough, which is not many. So, so you got to be better than a lot of people to have a chance at, getting that. But, over the last few years, they've done a good job of creating paths to the tour that aren't that harsh. You can play on the Mackenzie Tour in Canada, earn some status that way. They've created opportunities because, now they own a lot of these different tours. And in the past, they weren't, you could play well on one tour and that wouldn't do you any good towards the PGA Tour. And that's not the case anymore. So I think they've done a good job of creating more opportunity for guys that are, pursuing it. If you get out of college and want to try and pretty much, if you just play well, you'll probably funnel your way all the way up. Where in the past that might not have been the case. It was you had to be a little more tactical.
Are you more of like a so you're basically saying you got to be better than everyone around you, which makes sense. But like of the guy, like the 2000 D1 golfers, say like 1,000 of them are like legit, like they've won tournaments in junior golf and college golf. Like, do you think, how much of it do you think is like innate, natural, like they're just they're just sticks, and then how much of it do you think is like just like the grind? Because like when you say that you have to be better than everyone around you, like if there's like say 500 of those golfers who are like really close, like within a couple shots and like scoring average, like what's really like better, like if they make a huge stride in their game over like the course of a year, like that'd be like a pretty easy like jump ahead of other guys, right? Like is there any like so like a question to you would be like, how much, so once you get like the pool of guys who like are legit and have won tournaments, how much of it is going from college to professional golf? How much of it is like natural innate ability? How much of it is like work ethic and just pure grind? Or is it kind of like a up in the air depending on the person or the golfer?
Yeah, I don't think there's a simple answer to that. I think there's very few players that make it all the way to the PGA Tour just on talent alone. It's possible, but it's very few. So it's definitely a combination of, guys that have some innate ability, like you're saying, but there's just so many people working so hard at the game that, and it doesn't just come down to how hard you're working. It comes down to how smart you're working and making sure you're being efficient. And you could throw a bunch of hard work at the wrong thing and not get any better. We see golfers do that all the time that, practice their ass off and don't get any better. That's what, because it's a skill sport. It's, you don't necessarily get everything that you throw at it. And I think, so I guess to answer your question, I think what separates it is definitely work. Simply, yeah. Definitely.
Were you trying to go and play like after college? Was that ever in the cards for you? Or
I always thought, going into college, I always thought that was my plan, was playing college and then, go play professionally. And then I'd say pretty early on in college, I just kind of was having more fun helping the other guys and kind of realized, my game wasn't getting much better. Even if I practiced a ton, I just wasn't getting a whole lot better, where other guys around me were still getting better. And I think pretty early on I was having more fun helping other guys, and I kind of realized that whether it was just my personality or my energy or my knowledge or whatever, it was helpful to other players, and that was fun for me to feel like I was able to help someone get a little better. Like, that pumped me up.
Cool. So Coach, I remember the conversation that we had about this idea of work smarter, not harder, or the idea that you can work your ass off and then get work in the game of golf. And although like if you tell me to think about it, I probably would have said, yeah, you're right. But it was never something in my head that I was like, okay, yeah, that's evident. But, what do you think? It's a skills game, right? Golf is a skills game. And I think that for people who don't understand golf or haven't played it for long enough, they think, oh, like the more you practice, the better you're going to get. And, there's like no cap to how good you can be. But can you take into account for someone who's experienced like top D1 competition, like things like nerves or mental like strength and like physicality and being prepared, your body and your mind for a golf tournament, and how important that is to success?
Yeah, I think that all goes into it, and that's exactly why it's such a tough sport to get better at. It's a reason why we see so many people, and not just college golfers, just your average golfers. You go to the golf course and you see guys that are there every day and maybe not getting any better, and they may have a good coach and they may be legitimately trying hard, but yeah, like you're saying, there are these other factors. Your mental game, your physical game, how you're preparing, and these other facets. I think one thing that's interesting in golf specifically, and Luke, you may have touched on it on your intro about how I like biking. I think one thing I love about biking is, or just like endurance sports in general, I've gotten into running too. You really get everything out of it that you put into it. You go run, you get in better shape. Like you run a little faster. You just get faster. It's like a real simple curve to progress. And in golf, it's just not the case. And it's easy to highlight the people that struggle with it, but I think it's equally important to highlight people that are on the other end of it, that don't put in much work in volume, but put in very impressive, smart work and make huge strides. And that's what, if you really paid attention to, the players on the PGA Tour and watched how they work, those are the guys. That's the guys that are able to get the most out of their work, are the guys that end up being the best. And that's different for, everyone does that a little different way, because that's kind of about you as an individual, getting the most out of yourself and your time. But that's the trick. And for golfers, I think that's really, really what it boils down to. And it's a hard thing to teach someone. But it is something that, there are guys that have struggled and have come back from big time struggles. One guy that comes to mind is Brendan Todd. He was a stud in college, made it straight out on tour pretty quickly, had some success, and then fell off. One of the first years I was caddying for Chappell, when we were out on the Corn Ferry Tour, Brendan was just struggling. He was really just hitting it bad, hitting it like short and crooked. It was a struggle. And this was, this guy was a stud. This guy was a really good player. And I remember the week Chappell won up at TPC Stonebrae up here, we played behind Brendan Todd, and it was rough. He was really having a hard time playing the golf course. And if you would have asked me at that time, like, what's your prediction for Brendan Todd in the future, I'd be like, he's done. There's no way this guy's gonna come back from this, because clearly he had it. He was really good, and now he's lost it. And I would have hung up on him. And he win like back-to-back tournaments last year, or the guy's back, right? Like, guy's a phenomenal PGA Tour player. And so there's a guy that, I mean, from maybe the darkest of times as a professional, really come out the other side. There's hope. There's hope for golfers, even if your nerves are getting you, or some of these other parts of the game. I mean, there's hope. It can happen.
I remember you telling me like last year we were putting on the putting green at Turlock, and you were telling me two stories. One was about Morikawa, Colin, when you were at UCLA and you guys were like looking at him as a recruit, and then another one was about Jordan Spieth. You saw him at a tournament like miss a like 6-incher or something. Can you tell those stories again? Because I forgot. I remember I was like fascinated.
Yeah. So Spieth. So it was my first tournament when I was back coaching in 2012, and our first tournament. We were in Georgia playing like a national preview. That's where NCAAs were going to be in June, and we were playing there in September, and we were paired with Texas, and it was my first. Spieth was a stud, right? Like he was, everyone knew him when in high school. He was already making cuts on the PGA Tour, and he was a stud. And we were paired with Texas, and I forget which one of my guys was playing with them, but on the first hole. It's par 5. He hit it up there like 40 yards short of the green. Pitched it up real close. I mean, it was inside of a foot for sure. And went through his full routine and missed it. And he just had this reaction. Like, I mean, you just would have thought, I hate using the term yips, but you would have thought that like, his reaction was like, oh my God, like they're back. Like I've got the yips, like they're back, and that was his reaction. And this was, my first time seeing him play. And I was like, what is this? This guy's not going to make it. This guy's going to struggle. And I mean, obviously, he's had a ton of success, and then like he's gone through some struggles. Now he's playing better, but yeah, that was an interesting case. I'd never seen anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
Coach, Jordan to me, and I think to a lot of people who watch, he seems like a head case. He seems like he's got a lot of things going on up there, and he just like can't break him, can't shake him sometimes. And I swear, his caddy Greller has got to be just like, sometimes he's just like, he's got to be so detached from the situation, because he has to understand that Jordan's just going to say some random, BS line right after he hits a shot, like, oh, did you see that lie or something like that, or
and then like 3 times in a row, the exact.
Oh
yeah.
Yeah. I think, no, you're right, and I think a lot of us look at that as like a potential disqualifier, almost like I did when I saw him miss that putt and like have a weird reaction, right? I was just like, wrote him off. But I think some of the, on the top end, some of these guys that are just really good. I mean, it's not normal to be really good. It's not normal to be, the best in the world at something. And so these guys that have things that aren't quite normal, like, I think that's to be expected for, some of the top players in the world. And I mean, last summer I caddied a few events for Chap, and we played with Spieth at the Travelers, and must have been maybe it was like the 3rd round. And I mean, just like you're describing, some of the things he says to Greller, I mean, it's just hilarious. But it's such a perfect relationship they have, because most other people would take it too literal. Take it, like Jordan says, 3, 4, 5 things in a row to him. Greller can't respond to all of them, and it's good that he doesn't. He just take it for what it is.
He just takes it, right, and he just doesn't say anything.
He tries to, he basically decodes it and responds in a way that helps him. Wouldn't be any good to argue with him over everything he's saying. You know, it's not gonna do any good. He'll listen to what he's saying and, you know, pick one thing to either respond to or to, you know, act to or do whatever you gotta do. It's a good, they got a good relationship. I think that's a good social experiment that's worked out for him.
Mhm.
Go ahead, since it's story time. Tell us about the Morikawa story that Luke's talking about here.
Oh, well, that's more of just like recruiting failure in the, you know, of the highest order. Yeah, you know, I'm all into stats and numbers and yeah, Morikawa. I'm assuming this is the story you're talking about, Luke. It was about
I think,
recruiting.
yeah, you were like asking me who my favorite guys were, and I was like,
Okay, you said
Tiger,
that.
Freddie, and I was like, but I like this Morikawa guy coming
Oh, yeah.
out.
So yeah, we were recruiting Morikawa pretty heavily, and you know, we were all in on him. And you know, his you know, we look at scoring averages and like adjusted scoring averages and all these numbers, and his numbers were just great. And then, you know, but what we really look at are trends, and we really look at is someone getting better every year, and you know, we're trying to predict, is someone going to keep getting better? Are they going to, you know, level off? Where are they going to level off? That's kind of the trick, and that's kind of what I pride myself on trying to figure out. And very rarely between junior golf and someone's sophomore year in college, you rarely see a top player get worse one year to the next. They usually get a little better every year. Now, sometimes in college, you see some of these top players plateau, drop off a little bit. Hardly ever through junior golf, and hardly ever through freshman and sophomore year in college. So usually, if you take freshman year of high school to sophomore year in college, you're going to see a pretty steady trend upwards. And this is, you know, talking about the top recruits, top college players. And Morikawa was kind of heading that route, and then it must have been his junior year in high school. He had statistically had a really bad year, where, you know, scoring average was way different than what it was. He still played some good tournaments, and I think that's probably, you know, the part that I missed on there. But his average as a whole was a lot worse, and it was one of the only ones I've ever seen, you know, of these top recruits that had a year like that. And so, you know, we definitely didn't stop recruiting him. Obviously, he ended up going to Cal. He didn't go to UCLA. And it wasn't like we stopped recruiting him, but we weren't expecting him to have the collegiate career that he did. And so, you know, kind of reflecting back on it, I don't think it was as severe as what we saw with Brendan Todd, but maybe something similar where, you know, he was, I don't know, maybe, I don't think he went through a big swing change or anything, but maybe just fought some demons for a bit and conquered them, which I think a lot of us feel like once the demons are there, they're there for good, and it's just demon management. But there are people that have kicked the demons to the curb and, you know, come out the other side. Because yeah, Morikawa ended up being, I mean, having one of the best collegiate careers ever, and you know, he's gonna have a long career.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Coach. So I mean, from my background, having caddied at Bandon Dunes the past couple of summers, I'm really interested in the caddy player relationship. And so you having been with Chappell and being out on tour and things like that, has there been a caddy player relationship that you've noticed that's like just top notch, like the best, like the way they work together, and then maybe describe what that relationship looks like, if there's one in particular?
Yeah, I'd say one that stands out is Webb Simpson and his caddy Paul Tesori. I mean, just the perfect ham and egg. Like Webb, you know, Webb's such a good player, but he's very, I wouldn't say, I guess he's pretty one-dimensional. Like he has his bag of tricks, and that's kind of it. And when he has to step outside of his bag of tricks, that's where Paul Tesori, who's, you know, a good player himself, I mean, just really knows the game, really knows how to communicate with Webb. I want to say there was a time, and he won the U.S. Open at Olympic Club, right?
Yeah.
I think there was like a chip on the last hole where he had this real delicate little chip out of the rough. You know, he's right next to the green, thick rough, and I think he had like no clue how to hit it. And he asked Paul, like, it's like, hey, you know, how do I hit this one? And I mean, I couldn't imagine, you know, having to provide an answer on the 72nd hole of the U.S. Open, like when you're trying to win the thing, to try to tell someone that has a chance to win the U.S. Open how to hit a chip. And you know, I'm glad. So that's something, you know, where, you know, me, like I wouldn't shine in that situation as a caddy. So it was very good that they had that relationship where it was like, you know, his caddy was ready for it and had, I don't even know what he told him, and right or wrong, I mean, he won the tournament. But yeah, that's definitely a relationship that sticks out. And I think there's quite a few. There's quite a few out there where there's really good caddies that wouldn't necessarily be great caddies for, you know, other guys. They've kind of ended up in the right roles, and you know, they work well together.
Did you have like a favorite player to get paired with, either just because you enjoyed their company or you enjoyed watching them strike the shit out of it?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I always liked when we played with Kisner. Yeah, you know, Chap and Kisner, they get along real well. So like, I always knew Chap was going to be in a good mood, and yeah, they were like, but they were competitive. So like, yeah, and that was good, you know. And no matter, even if one of them is struggling, they're still going to like talk to each other, and that was always one I looked forward to, is when we were playing with him. Trying to think of, I mean, whenever we got paired with DJ, I love when we play with DJ, because I mean, it's just kind of silly how good and hard and straight he hits it. I was always just blown away.
Was he slinging a draw back then when you were caddying, like, or just pretty straight?
It was pretty straight. I mean, it may have moved. I mean, it may have maybe moved a little bit, but man, he just hit it straight and far. Yeah, like I'd walk the course. You know, I'd walk the course earlier in the week with, you know, his caddy. His caddy at the time was guy Bobby Brown, and I mean, some of the line, you know, par fours, you know, we're checking like through lines through the fairway, and you know, making sure we, you know where to tell our guys to aim. And some of the lines that he's checking just didn't even make sense to me. You know, cutting corners and, you know, real narrow, small. You know, he was just hitting, because he just liked to hit driver everywhere. And I mean, he was just hitting in some just hilarious places where, you know, again, would have been very interesting to caddy for, you know, to spot those lines and to, you know, help a guy that's going to hit it 340 on a rope.
Yeah.
Did DJ kind of keep to himself? Like whenever you got paired with him, like, would you guys ever chop it up at all, or?
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
he'd chat, and you know, we played against him a little bit in college. Like he might have been 1 or 2 years older than us, but yeah, we always crossed paths with him in college. And him and Chappell are, you know, they have a good relationship, and so yeah, he'd chat and you know, joke around in his own way.
So Coach, before we get to the real story time, where I wanted you to bring up a good story you have of maybe one of AK, if we could drop it in there, but we'll see. I wanted to talk to you about more specifics of golf coaching for university, more specifically recruiting, and how some players, some young junior golfers growing up, how they may want to model their game, or where they should look to progress and ways to get the attention of golf coaches, whether it be D3, D2, D1, and AIA? How can they get to the next step, and what's important for you as a coach to see in a young player?
Yeah, I think there's a lot there, and I think, you know, the way I recruit might be different than other coaches, but you know, my best advice would be to really like play as many tournaments as you can. And I think that but I would say, you know, not necessarily junior tournaments. Don't play necessarily as many junior tournaments as you can. If that's all you can play, if that's all you know, that are close by or that like makes sense, you know, financially or logistically to just play junior tournaments, then that's fine. But if you can play amateur tournaments or, you know, just city championships, stuff like that, I think that's the key to like separate yourself from, you know, kind of what everyone else is doing. And also I just know, you know, as a coach, like I want to figure out, if I'm looking at a recruit and I'm looking at a junior golfer, I'm trying to figure out, well, you know, how's this guy going to play on my team? Where would he stack up with my guys? What would he shoot on the golf courses we're playing on? Because that's the tricky thing with junior tournaments is, you know, like the AJGA, they do a good job of setting up their courses and, you know, pretty consistently. And you can look at AJGA scores and kind of understand them because they're consistent in their setup and their difficulty. But in general, it's like they're playing shorter courses, you know, especially if you're playing most of your golf over summer, you know, you're playing, you know, good weather, warm weather, balls going far. Like, I think, you know, what's important to me is looking at tournaments that happen, you know, during school or during like a Thanksgiving break or a spring break, because that's what's going to cross over to how you're going to play in college, you know. Because we're playing where you're missing classes, when, you know, you've got midterms and papers due and all sorts of stuff going on. And then we got to, you know, go to some course you've never played and play a 54-hole tournament. And so figuring out, you know, who's going to be good at that is what's important to me. And that's, you know, one thing I look at when I'm recruiting. But I guess to answer your question, if I was speaking to a junior golfer looking to, you know, get their name out and they really want to play college golf, play as many tournaments as you can. That's
Yeah. That seems to be the consensus. That's what I remember growing up. That was the thing. And specifically, as you said, not necessarily junior tournaments, like state AMs or other like amateur events in your area. That way you stack yourself up against other people who have either played college golf or are playing college golf. I think that would be valuable information to a golf coach, right? Yeah. All right. Well, Luke, do you have any more questions? I want to hear this. I want to hear some stories from BC right here.
Just off of that last point, do you ever get them to like send you a swing video, or like how important is it for you to go watch them play? Like, or is it just, are you looking at their stats type thing?
I would say for me, it's like seeing their swing or really watching them play is 5% of what's important to me. It's real small. There are coaches that it's a much higher percentage. There are coaches that are way more into what it looks like. But yeah, to me, that's a real small percentage, real small factor. Like I said, I think, you know, a couple things I look at mostly are grades. Make sure they're going to be able to come here and pass some classes. It's pretty important. And then I look at their trends. I try and figure out, you know, is this person getting better, or is you know, have they leveled off? And you know, and I try and then I guess the third thing that's important to me is I try and figure out how good of coaching they've had to this point. Because if someone's pretty good already without maybe having much good coaching, then that's, you know, pretty exciting to me. And then the flip side, if someone's if their scores are okay, but they've had a lot of really good coaching and they've been playing for a while, you know, then it's tough, because then, you know, I wouldn't be too confident that they're going to get much better. You know, if they've already had good coaching and been playing for a while, you know, it's like, maybe I can help a little bit, but not as much as someone that's, you know, had no coaching.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. All right, Coach.
Story time.
Give it to us. What you got?
You want what?
I would love to hear an Anthony Kim story if you have one. I know you got a couple.
What's the, you know, I follow the legend of AK out there on the interwebs right now. Is there any latest on him? I mean,
I swear he's a ghost. I don't ever hear anything about him. I don't know.
I was just looking at his Wikipedia before this, and the last thing that's on there is, it says 2016. He did like an informal interview, and someone asked him like, "How's the golf game?" And he says it was, quotes, non-existent.
Yeah.
2006, 5 years ago.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, Anthony, I mean, we grew up playing junior golf together. He grew up, you know, pretty close by. And I mean, he was always a good buddy. And I mean, we still keep in contact, you know, a little bit, you know, maybe I talk to him like, you know, a couple times a year or something like that. But I mean, you want to talk about, so back to what we were talking about earlier about how you could practice a lot and get worse. Anthony was the exact opposite. He was the guy that, you know, could get more out of a 30-minute range session than, I mean, most guys could do in a month. It was pretty silly how, you know, how efficient he was, and how, I mean, but it's just his golf IQ is just through the roof. And you know, he would, if he was hitting it right, he would just go on the range and figure out a way to not hit it right. And it just wouldn't take him that long. And it was hard work, but it was just, he was so efficient. And, you know, I think because it was just the game was so simple to him. And I mean, have you guys seen his swing? Have you guys seen his action much?
Yeah.
Had a pretty
very simple.
Yeah, super simple, pretty unique, and you know, he really choked up a lot. Like, I mean, does anyone do that now? I don't even think that's.
No.
I don't think you see a single guy.
He did a clinic with Tiger. I remember watching it. Yeah. Said that he grew up playing with his dad's club, so he just used to choking up. And then when Nike sponsored him, he's like, yeah, just make him a couple inches long, and it just felt comfortable for him.
Yeah. But okay, I mean, so I've got a couple Anthony stories that I could, you know, that he probably wouldn't get too upset about.
All right, good.
But yeah, one of them, we were playing the USAM at Wingfoot. It must have been right before I went to college. It must have been 2004. The USAM was at Wingfoot. No, yeah, 2004. And I'd played a US Junior Am. And this was my first USAM. He had played a few. He was pretty good. And we were staying together. You know, had like, you know, guest housing. We were staying at, you know, someone's big old house, and we were both staying together. And I don't know. I mean, Wingfoot just ate me up. Absolutely beat me up. I think, you know, I shot over 80 both days, missed the cut by a million. And he played all right. And I remember watching him, you know, the second round of stroke play, I'd like finished up and he was still out there, and I went out and check up on him. And he had some like local kid caddying for him. And the kid was just a mess, like could barely carry his bag. And Anthony was like, hey, he's like, BC, you didn't make the cut, did you? I'm like, no, way off. He's like, you gonna caddy for me tomorrow? I'm like, yeah. I'll caddy for you. And this is, I mean, he's like still playing. He's like has a couple holes left of stroke play, you know. And he's poor kid. The kid's like right there, you know, in front of him. And you know, just found out, you know, he's getting fired for match play. And you know, I felt bad for the kid, but the kid was done.
Yeah.
So So Anthony made the cut, and the first round of match play, I forget who he was playing the first round. Some college player at the time, good player, and they were having a good match. We might have been like Anthony they might have been even, it might have been all square through 10. And so Anthony always had this problem where, guys got so pumped up to play against him in match play, and he always had a problem. He wasn't that good of a match play player because he'd always run into guys playing their best golf. I don't know what it was, but he always brought the best golf out of people. Like when guys were playing him, they just got fired up, and like, I don't know, like they just played well. They always played well against him. This happened, in past years at the USAM. He'd, play good in match play and lose, and it was always something I saw. But then this was the first time I was seeing it firsthand because I was caddying for him in match play. So, anyways, we're through 10 holes. He's all square with this guy. They're both playing really good. Winged Foot just beat up people in stroke play. I think Ryan Moore might have been the medalist. He might have been 1 under. He was the only guy under par. And these guys they're playing great through 10 holes. They're all square. The 11th hole at Winged Foot, it's a short par 4, but you can't hit driver off the tee. It just like narrows up and goes up to the green. So I think Anthony had the tee, and he grabs driver, and I'm sitting there. I'm like, what? I didn't even know. I thought he just grabbed it by mistake. I'm like, what are you doing? And he's like, oh, like I'm gonna, hit that fairway up there. And I'm like, what? There's no fairway. The fairway stops at like 240, and then there's no fairway. And he's got a little fairway, and he's talking about the walking path, like they cut, like a 2-yard walking path, because the fairway ends and there's like these just fairway bunkers and just rough. Like there's no fairway, but they cut a walking path that goes from 250 to up towards the green. And he's like, I'm hitting that. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And he's still like, we're having this conversation on the tee, and he's like, and he looks over at me, and he's like, I gotta show this guy that I'm gonna win the match. I gotta show this guy that he doesn't have a chance. I gotta like kill his spirit. I'm like, all right, like that sounds pretty cool. And sure enough, he hits this little fairway, rattled the guy enough. The guy like missed the fairway. Anthony won the hole. I don't remember if he birdie or parted, and he pretty much just cruised in from there and won the match, a couple up. And it really was like just that from that one shot. And I mean, wow, it was the most ridiculous play. I mean, you could never make this play. I mean,
this was like a walking path like they have between the fairway and the tee boxes. Is that
like right off a tee box? Yeah, where they would cut to the fairway where you're supposed
like
to
a cart could go down it, but nothing else, right?
Why does a golf cart?
Oh my god!
Why does a golf cart? How deep was the rough?
Oh, I mean, the rough was unplayable. The rough was, I mean, yeah. If he misses this fairway, you cannot hit the green. You're just chipping out. I mean, the rough was. I mean, you could just lose a ball like if it fell out of your pocket. I mean, the rough was unbelievable. But yeah, that was, that was the type of player. That was the type of player he was, and those were the types of things and the way he was thinking. And it wasn't that he was just so reckless. He was just hitting driver like just because. He was dead serious. He's like, it was it was like a chess move. It was a mental, he was trying to break this guy, and wow. And, he couldn't, the guy didn't budge through 10 holes, and Anthony just picked this unreasonable spot to make that type of move. But I mean, he did it, and it was really impressive. But then, so he won that match. Then the next match, he was playing this guy, Chris Nalen, who, really good player. Again, this is Winged Foot, has beat everyone up in stroke play. I don't know that anyone shot under par on the harder of the course. I forget what the different courses were. We're on the 7th or 8th hole in the second match against Chris Nalen, and Anthony might have been even or 1 under, which is, I mean, is really good golf. And I think he was like 2 or 3 down. And, you know, Chris was, you know, 3 or 4 under. And Anthony, like, never gives anyone credit. I mean, never, ever, especially another competitor. He's never the guy to say, like, you know, oh, this guy looks good or this guy's playing good. You know, I've never heard him really give much credit, even, you know, if someone really deserves it. And we're on the 7th or 8th hole, and Anthony comes over to me and he's like, "This is the best golf I've ever seen. This guy's playing. This is I've never seen anyone play like this. Like, what's going on?" And so, and, I mean, he ended up losing the match, and it was, you know, like I said, I don't know what it was, but he struggled in match play, no fault of his own. It was almost like just his personality. You know, people just showed up to play him. But yeah, I think you know, he's such an interesting character for golf, and it's so funny to me that, you know, he still pops up. You know, I see him on the social media, you know, lore every now and then. You know, it's cool that people still have an appreciation for, you know, how good he was, and kind of, you know, yeah, he was a little more, you know, he was flashy, and he's a cool, you know, character for the game for sure.
What was the guy's name? Who he gave credit to?
Chris Nalen.
Chris Nalen. Okay.
I think he coaches at University of Arizona. I think he's like, or he was the assistant there recently. I don't know if he still is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, you got to look him up. I think he might have shot like a 60 in college. He had like one of the lowest college rounds ever. Yeah, the guy's a real player.
So BC prediction: does AK ever come back and play in a professional event?
No. I'd say definitely not.
Mm-hmm.
I know he still plays golf, and he's been coaching his fiance right now, and he's been helping her. He's been helping her with her golf game.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so he's still out there, and you know, I think he's in Dallas mostly, and he's definitely seems to be getting out more than he was a few years ago. So I bet there's definitely been some more AK sightings, and I wouldn't be surprised if he comes out of his hole a little more at some point.
Gotcha. Well, that was a great story, Coach. I'm not going to take any more from you, because that was pretty sick. Anyways, Luke, do you have any final remarks for Coach? We should probably wrap it up in a little bit.
Did you have any? Did you? I probably asked you this before, but I forgot. Did you ever play with Tiger, like with Chap, when you were counting for Chap?
No, we never played with him. We might have like played a few holes in a practice round, or like cross paths with them a little bit out on the course in a practice round, but we weren't paired with him when I was caddying.
Okay.
He's played with him, you know, since I was caddying for him. Like, he's played with him quite a bit, but not when I was caddying. Unfortunately, it would have been sweet.
Mm-hmm. All right. Yeah. Well, I have one more question for you. I asked Ben. I don't know if you caught this. I asked Ben this in I think the second podcast. Totally stumped him. It's like when you ask me. It's like when we're out on the course, and you always just come up to me and ask, "What do you think?"
What are you thinking? What do you think?
What do you think?
What do you think? I'll never be able to respond to that. But yeah, so my question: favorite golf memory or best golf memory, entire life.
Best golf memory
stick out
of my entire life. I would say I got 2 answers. I would say for my own game and my own golf, I would say it was when I won that tournament in Japan. That was, you know, I mean, I was young when I won it, but I still remember it. And I still remember, I think I shot 67 the final round, and I remember like playing the back 9 and just being, I mean, absolutely in the zone. Like, really, I never played golf like that before. That was the first time I just really played, real golf, and it was cool to do in the final round and to win the tournament. The guy I beat, this guy, Henry Lau, at the time, I mean, he was the man. He was the guy. He was winning everything. He was, he was the kid trying to break all Tiger's records and whatnot. That was cool to, and it wasn't like he played bad that tournament, but yeah, that was definitely the highlight of that was the most fond memory I have of myself on a golf course. But I'd say a memory that wasn't of my own golf, but was still on a golf course, would be caddying for Chap. We were playing in Canada, and it was I think the name of it might have been like the Gretzky. I think it was like the Wayne Gretzky. It was like a pro-am. You had a pro-am partner, and the first round, I want to say, I don't know if I'll get this right. I want to say he birdied the first 6 holes, and then like parred 7, and like maybe birdied 8 and 9. I mean, he might have been like 8 under through 9. I mean, it was just ridiculous. And I'll just never forget it, because like he birdied the first 6, and he looks over at me and he's like, when do you think the cameras will show up? Because there was a few different courses. There was a few different courses we were on, and we were on like not the main one. We were on the the one that that all the cameras weren't on, and it was just it's just a moment that sticks out, because here's a guy who was in the zone, he was just absolutely birding every hole and making the game look easy. And he was, a lot of times when people are in that position, it's easy to get defensive. It's easy to like, leave a putt short, or to like not keep it going, right? It's like hard to keep it going. Yeah. And he was on such a level at that point. He was like, I want the cameras here. Like, I'm going to keep making birdies. Like, this is go time. And I think he ended up shooting, like 61, maybe. It might have been like, I don't know what the par was. Might have been 10 or 11 under. I mean, it was the lowest round I think I'd ever seen or caddied for.
Yeah.
But it was, that moment stuck out because it was so unusual. Like I said, I mean, I've seen a lot of good golf, seen, people go on runs, but usually, even when it was so cool that he was that confident that, he was like, the show is here. Where are the cameras? So yeah.
I remember when we followed him at the Safeway last year in Napa. I remember he was like hovering on the cut line all day. And then he like 3-whacked 16 to go 1 outside of the cut line. Yeah. And then 17 was like a 220-yard par 3, and he hits it like 20 feet in birdies. And I think he birdied 18 too. And yeah, I remember afterwards he was like, to us, like I think it was like Mike, Tim, you and I, and he was like, I wanted you boys to see that, like just grinding, making the cut there. Like I thought that was pretty cool. Yeah, and I think he had like a really good up and down maybe in there too, and yeah, and then even his birdie on the last hole was like a par 5. He reached into, but then kind of, I don't know if he had like a long putt or chipped it, 10, 12 feet past it and made one. Yeah, but that's how he is. He's like, I mean, he's tough. Mm-hmm. He's tough. He's up for the challenge, and it's important for him. That's something he always tries to, when he chats with the UCLA team or when he talks to you guys, he's like real conscious of, trying to have that be a takeaway of like, hey, look, like this game's not easy. This game didn't come easy to me. It's tough, and being tough pays off, and it's worth sticking it out. For sure.
That's cool. Oh, that's a great way to end it, Coach. Right there. That's a good message. That's a good message right there. Thank you so much for joining us, Coach Christianson, BC, the man. If we have time in the next couple weeks, or well, maybe it might be longer than that, but we might want to have you back on because you're legit, Coach. We appreciate your time.
You know what we ought to do? I listen to, your Masters podcast. I don't know if you ever want to do like a while golf's going on, we could be like watching the final round of like, the US Open or some major, and do like a live show from the final round, and chat about some action while it's happening.
Yeah, I think the PGA is like what, 2-3 weeks from now?
2 weeks away. Yep.
Yeah, that'd be sick. I like that idea, Coach.
Keep it in mind. That'd be something fun for me.
All right, cool.
Awesome.
Cool. We'll think about that. All right. Well, thanks again. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us today on the 4th edition of the Birdie Brothers podcast. And we'll see you next time.
Awesome.
Thanks, guys.
PT.
We'll see you guys.
We talking tops of court, I played that too, cuz everything.